From the moment Sally Struthers stepped onto the set of All in the Family in 1971, she sensed something extraordinary. The cameras rolled, the scripts were read, and yet amidst the chaos of production, a quiet, almost imperceptible connection flickered between her and Rob Reiner. On screen, they were Michael and Gloria Stivic, the emblem of youthful, progressive love in a turbulent America. Audiences laughed, cried, and cheered, convinced that the chemistry they witnessed week after week must be real. Letters poured in, praising the pair, celebrating the apparent perfection of a bond that seemed untouched by the flaws of reality. But behind the bright lights, the warmth of the cameras, and the applause of live audiences, the truth was far more complex. Rob Reiner, at just 23, carried the energy and idealism of a young actor ready to challenge conventions. He was brilliant, insightful, and commanding in his craft, guiding the cast through script readings, adjusting lines to match the reactions of the studio audience, shaping each scene with a precision few could rival. Sally admired his talent, his intuition, and the subtle understanding he showed in moments both mundane and intense. She felt her heart stir in ways she had never experienced before. Every glance, every shared joke, every rehearsal became a private world between them, one that existed beyond the knowledge of the crew, beyond the spectacle of television history. Yet the connection Sally felt was fragile, tempered by boundaries Rob maintained with unwavering discipline. He was cold, distant at times, and often deliberately kept the lines of personal intimacy blurred. When Sally's admiration began to deepen into something more, Rob's response was cautious, careful, and clear. Their relationship was anchored in professionalism. He respected her, acknowledged her talent, but made certain that any personal feelings would not compromise their work or his own commitments. Sally, though disappointed, understood the necessity, even as her emotions quietly twisted into longing and silent heartache. 8 seasons passed. The world watched Michael and Gloria grow together, clash, reconcile, and navigate the complexities of family, society, and love. To the audience, their bond seemed unbreakable, an enduring testament to both performance and partnership. Behind the camera, however, the story was markedly different. Sally learned early that admiration alone did not guarantee reciprocity, that sometimes closeness could be one-sided, and that the heart could ache in silence even amidst laughter and applause. The illusion of perfection carried weight beyond the set. Every scene, every line read, every laugh that rolled through the studio carried the invisible burden of unspoken truths. Sally's heart, invested yet unacknowledged, bore witness to the disparity between what audiences believed and what truly existed. The gap between performance and reality was subtle but profound, shaping her experience, her memories, and the emotional landscape she would carry for decades. And so, from the very first day, the story of Sally Struthers and Rob Reiner was one of contrasts: brilliance and coldness, admiration and unrequited affection, laughter and silent longing. The world saw perfection. She lived the tension beneath it, a narrative hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment when the walls of silence would finally crumble. In the early months of All in the Family, the set was a whirlwind of activity, script readings, rehearsals, and constant adjustments to capture the perfect balance of humor, social commentary, and authenticity. Sally Struthers arrived each day with enthusiasm radiating from her every gesture, eyes wide with anticipation, ready to immerse herself in the world of Gloria Stivic. Across from her, Rob Reiner embodied Michael Stivic with a mix of youthful idealism and quiet intensity. From their first reading together, Sally sensed a subtle rhythm, a silent understanding that neither could fully explain. It was as if, despite being strangers, they could anticipate each other's thoughts, reactions, and timing, creating a seamless flow on screen that left the audience believing in a love story far more profound than fiction. Their collaboration was not effortless. Every morning began with debates over lines, pauses, and inflections. Rob, ever meticulous, often suggested adjustments mid-read, guiding the cast to elicit the precise emotional responses necessary for each scene. Sally admired his ability to read the room, to predict how a live audience would respond to a joke, a glance, or a small gesture. He could feel the heartbeat of the performance and adapt on the spot, a talent few actors or directors possessed. Sally found herself drawn not only to his skill, but to the subtle patience he offered, the way he respected her instincts while gently challenging her to dig deeper into the character. Off camera, their relationship existed in a realm both intimate and restrained. They shared inside jokes, laughter that lingered in the quiet moments between takes, and mutual admiration for each other's craft. Sally began to notice that her feelings for Rob were growing beyond the boundaries of professional respect. She tried to mask it, to channel the flutter of her heart into her performance, letting her affection for him enhance the authenticity of Gloria's emotions. Every touch of the script, every glance across the set, carried a tension that the audience could never see, a private language spoken in smiles, subtle nods, and fleeting eye contact. Despite this growing closeness, Rob maintained a deliberate distance. He was polite, considerate, yet firm in his boundaries, aware that any personal entanglement could disrupt the delicate balance of the production, or worse, complicate his personal life. Sally sensed the distance, but she also recognized the brilliance behind his caution. Rob was building more than a performance. He was protecting the integrity of his show, the trust of his colleagues, and, ultimately, the authenticity of the characters they brought to life. It was a delicate dance, one where emotions could easily collide with professionalism, and where admiration could quickly turn into heartache. As weeks turned into months, their on-screen chemistry flourished. Scenes between Michael and Gloria became nuanced, charged with subtle emotions that seemed entirely natural. Audiences were captivated, convinced that the love and friction they observed reflected reality. Sally's heart raced during moments of intimacy or tension, her own feelings intertwining with Gloria's scripted emotions. Every argument, reconciliation, and tender exchange on camera carried an undercurrent of Sally's unspoken longing and Rob's careful, measured responses. It was a paradoxical experience. She felt closer to him than anyone she had ever known, yet she was constantly reminded of the boundaries he maintained. The challenges were not only emotional, but also practical. The pace of production, the demands of live audience reactions, and the scrutiny of critics created a pressure cooker environment. Sally found solace in their shared understanding, in the rare moments when Rob would offer guidance or encouragement, moments that felt like glimpses of a connection that might have been, had circumstances been different. Yet even then, the invisible wall remained. Rob's brilliance as an actor and his dedication to the craft often masked the emotional distance he maintained, and Sally had to reconcile her growing affection with the reality that it would likely remain unreciprocated. Throughout the first season and into the second, the pattern became clear. They were partners in art, collaborators who shared victories and frustrations, triumphs and setbacks. Every rehearsal, every live taping, and every audience applause reinforced the duality of their relationship, the magical chemistry for the world and the quiet, restrained longing behind the scenes. By the end of the early seasons, Sally realized that this delicate balance between admiration, unspoken affection, and professional respect would define their connection for years to come. The foundation of trust and mutual understanding was strong, yet tempered by the unyielding distance Rob maintained. It was a lesson in emotional restraint, a study in unreciprocated feelings, and a glimpse into the complexities of human relationships hidden behind the bright lights of television. In those formative months, Sally and Rob created more than a show. They crafted an invisible bond that would shape their memories, their performances, and ultimately, the untold story that would remain buried for decades. It was during the middle of the third season that Sally Struthers felt the emotions she had long contained rise to the surface. Every day on set, the delicate rhythm she shared with Rob Reiner, the subtle glances, the inside jokes, the quiet understanding. had become a constant, invisible pulse in her chest. She found herself counting the moments until a shared scene would allow them a fleeting closeness, an exchange that went unnoticed by the cameras, but left an indelible mark on her heart. The connection that had started as admiration and professional camaraderie had, over time, transformed into something more profound, something Sally could no longer ignore. One afternoon, after filming a particularly intense scene, she found herself alone with Rob in a quiet corridor behind the set. The world of lights, cameras, and applause was muted here, replaced by a stillness that seemed almost sacred. Sally's heart pounded as she summoned the courage to speak. "Rob," she whispered, voice barely audible over the hum of equipment. "Do you want to get away from the crowd? Just the two of us, to talk or take a walk." It was a simple invitation, yet to Sally, it carried the weight of years of longing, hope, and the silent ache of unspoken affection. For a moment, Rob looked at her with a softness she had never seen. His eyes lingered for a second longer than usual, and she allowed herself to imagine that perhaps he understood, perhaps he felt something too. But then the smile faded. The warmth evaporated, replaced by a firmness that was impossible to ignore. He shook his head gently, yet decisively. "Sally, don't do this. You have a husband, I have a wife. We are colleagues, co-stars. We must live with dignity." The words cut her to the core. They were not angry words. They were calm, measured, but the precision of his refusal struck like a sharp blade, leaving her frozen in place. Sally's face flushed, a combination of embarrassment and heartbreak. She tried to swallow her rising emotions, to steady herself. Rob did not raise his voice, did not waver. His rejection was absolute yet understated, a reminder that their bond could not extend beyond the professional. Sally turned away, forcing a composed smile as she returned to the bustle of the set, hiding the tumult inside her. No one else could know. Not the crew, not Gene Stapleton, not even Carol O'Connor. This was a secret wound she would carry alone. In the days that followed, the tension on set became a silent companion. Every interaction with Rob was now layered with the memory of that corridor, every scene on camera infused with a complexity Sally had not anticipated. She poured the pangs of her unreciprocated feelings into her performance, allowing Gloria Stivick's lines to carry the weight of her own longing. Viewers saw the authenticity, the depth, the passion, but could not perceive the personal heartbreak underpinning each smile and tear. The duality of life on set, joy and sorrow, performance and reality, became sharply defined. Even as they worked side by side, Sally felt the invisible barrier Rob maintained. He was kind, considerate, and at times collaborative, yet every gesture was tempered by professional caution. She understood rationally. He was protecting his marriage, respecting boundaries, and navigating the complex landscape of personal and professional responsibility. But understanding did little to ease the ache in her heart. Each glance from him reminded her of what could never be, and each conversation, no matter how light or casual, carried the ghost of rejection. Despite the pain, Sally's admiration for Rob never waned. She witnessed his brilliance, his creativity, his uncanny ability to anticipate audience reactions and guide performances with subtle yet profound adjustments. She marveled at his talent, his intellect, and his commitment to the craft. Yet these qualities, so compelling and magnetic, only deepened her unspoken longing. It was a paradox. The very qualities that drew her to him also ensured the emotional distance she could not bridge. By the end of that season, Sally had learned to navigate this complex emotional terrain with grace. She maintained professionalism, delivered performances infused with genuine emotion, and carried her private heartache in silence. The unspoken affection, the first confession and its rejection, became a defining moment, one that would shape her interactions with Rob for the remainder of the series and linger long after the cameras stopped rolling. It was a lesson in restraint, in admiration tempered by reality, and in the quiet endurance of a heart that had dared to hope and suffered in its wake. After that first confession, the dynamic between Sally Struthers and Rob Reiner shifted subtly yet irrevocably. On camera, they continued to perform flawlessly, embodying Michael and Gloria with a chemistry that audiences believed was unbreakable. Behind the scenes, however, an invisible chasm had formed, filled with unspoken emotions, careful boundaries, and a shared understanding of limits neither dared to cross. Every smile, every casual remark, every laugh they exchanged carried a weight that no one else could perceive. Sally learned to navigate this space carefully, balancing admiration with caution, longing with restraint. Rob's distance was not cruel, nor was it abrupt. It was measured, deliberate, and consistent. He maintained a professionalism that demanded respect, and in doing so, created a barrier that left Sally longing without hope. On set, he was courteous, attentive to his craft, and supportive of the ensemble. Yet, every gesture, every interaction was subtly restrained, keeping the personal at bay. Sally felt the tension in the quiet pauses, in the fleeting eye contact, and in the subtle gestures that once had seemed intimate. She began to internalize her feelings, channeling them into her portrayal of Gloria, finding a bittersweet depth in her performance that audiences responded to with acclaim. The pressure of live audiences, critics, and the relentless pace of production amplified the complexity of their relationship. Sally learned that closeness could be both exhilarating and painful, that admiration and affection could exist alongside rejection and distance. Every scene was a negotiation between the heart and the professional persona, between the private self and the character she portrayed. Her affection for Rob became a silent undercurrent, influencing the nuance of her performances, the timing of her expressions, and the authenticity of her reactions. As seasons progressed, Sally observed Rob's extraordinary abilities unfold. He was more than a co-star. He was a creative force, an actor whose intuition guided the rhythm of the show, and a mind that understood how subtle shifts in dialogue and pacing could change the impact of a scene. Sally admired him deeply for his talent, even as her heart ached in the shadows of unrequited feelings. The contrast between the brilliance she witnessed and the emotional distance she experienced intensified the complexity of her feelings. She loved the man she worked with, even while knowing that the man she longed for would never be fully hers. Off-camera, Rob's careful maintenance of boundaries extended into social situations, award ceremonies, and casual interactions. Sally learned to adjust, to navigate the unspoken rules he set, and to preserve her own dignity. Each encounter became a delicate dance, a handshake here, a polite nod there, an acknowledgement of collaboration without crossing into the territory of personal intimacy. Sally's admiration for him remained undiminished, but the sting of unreciprocated affection lingered, becoming an invisible weight she carried through every season. The culmination of each season marked not only the end of story arcs on screen, but also the reinforcement of emotional distance off-screen. When the final take was called, the applause faded, and the cameras were turned off, Sally felt the isolation most acutely. The camaraderie, the laughter, the private jokes, those ephemeral moments that had provided comfort during filming, were fleeting, leaving her with a deep sense of solitude. She understood that Rob's brilliance and dedication demanded boundaries, yet the realization did not ease the heartache that accompanied each fleeting glance or moment of shared understanding that could never evolve into personal closeness. Even as Rob Reiner's career grew beyond All in the Family, moving into directing and achieving critical acclaim, the patterns established during those early years remained. Sally experienced a mixture of pride and melancholy, witnessing the success of a man she admired while grappling with the emotional void left by his consistent distance. Their relationship became a study in contrasts, professional harmony on screen, silent longing off-screen, admiration mingled with heartbreak, mutual respect entangled with unfulfilled desire. By the end of their time on the show, Sally had internalized a painful yet essential truth. She would carry her feelings privately, using them to deepen her craft, while respecting the boundaries Rob set. The emotional tension of unspoken affection and professional dedication would remain a defining aspect of her experience, shaping both her portrayal of Gloria Stivic and her understanding of human connection within the unforgiving framework of Hollywood. It was a lesson in resilience, patience, and the quiet endurance of a heart committed to both art and unrequited love. After All in the Family concluded, both Sally Struthers and Rob Reiner stepped into new chapters of their lives, carrying the lessons, triumphs, and private pains of 8 intense seasons. For Rob, the transition was seamless. He moved into directing with remarkable success, quickly establishing himself as a visionary force in Hollywood. Films like Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, and A Few Good Men showcased his mastery of storytelling, his ability to balance humor with human complexity, and his innate understanding of character development. His star rose steadily, and he became celebrated not only as an actor, but also as one of the most respected directors of his generation. Sally, meanwhile, faced a different journey. Her portrayal of Gloria had earned her accolades, including 2 Emmy Awards, cementing her place in television history. Yet, the personal cost of her time on the show remained a quiet shadow. The unreciprocated feelings she had harbored for Rob, the rejection, and the distance he maintained lingered in her memory. Every triumph and opportunity she pursued came with the subtle ache of that unresolved emotional connection. The excitement of new roles and projects could not entirely fill the void left by a friendship that had once promised more, but ultimately delivered only professional respect and emotional restraint. In Hollywood, success often demands sacrifice. Sally embraced her career with vigor, taking roles in television, theater, and film that allowed her to explore new dimensions of performance. She approached each character with intensity, often drawing upon the complex emotions she had experienced during her years with Rob. The longing, the frustration, the quiet heartache, all became tools she wielded with precision, infusing her performances with depth and authenticity. Yet even as her professional life flourished, she carried with her the memory of a closeness that had ended abruptly, leaving a lingering emptiness that no applause or recognition could completely soothe. The years that followed were marked by intermittent contact with Rob. Occasional phone calls and rare encounters at industry events reminded Sally of the bond they had once shared. These moments, however brief, highlighted the emotional chasm that had grown over time. Rob remained polite, professional, and considerate, but the warmth and intimacy she had once hoped for were largely absent. The cold nods, formal greetings, and measured interactions reinforced the understanding that their connection, while significant, would always be bounded by professional and personal constraints. Sally often reflected on those 8 seasons, recognizing that the experiences on set had shaped her both as an actress and as a person. The shared triumphs, the laughter in the hallways, the subtle glances during live audience recordings, all had created an emotional tapestry that was at once joyous and painful. She understood that the depth of her feelings for Rob had added layers to her portrayal of Gloria, enriching her performance with a realism that resonated with audiences. Yet the awareness that these emotions were unreturned, that the intimacy she craved would remain unattainable, was a source of enduring melancholy. As Rob's career soared, Sally also observed the shifting dynamics of Hollywood relationships. Friendships and collaborations were often fleeting, influenced by success, fame, and personal circumstances. She recognized that Rob's distance might have been necessary for his own path, that his priorities and commitments shaped his interactions with others. Still, rational understanding could not erase the personal pain. Each award ceremony, each premiere, each recognition of Rob's brilliance reminded her of what had once existed between them and what had ultimately been lost. Throughout her subsequent career, Sally carried both admiration and sorrow. The memory of their early connection, the shared moments of understanding and laughter, and the silent ache of unspoken feelings continued to resonate. She learned to compartmentalize, channeling the intensity of her emotions into her craft while protecting herself from the recurring sting of unrequited affection. Her career flourished, her talents were recognized, and yet the bittersweet imprint of Rob Reiner remained a constant presence, a reminder that even the closest bonds can be defined as much by what is withheld as by what is shared. By the time the years had passed, Sally had developed a profound understanding of human relationships, the complexities of emotion, and the intricate interplay of admiration, longing, and restraint. She respected Rob, appreciated his brilliance, and cherished the memories of their time together, even as she continued to navigate the quiet loneliness left by a connection that had once held so much promise but ultimately remained just beyond reach. In this space, she found resilience, channeling her experiences into performances that captivated audiences while carrying the silent story of a heart both enriched and wounded by love unfulfilled. 2 decades had passed since All in the Family ended, yet the memory of those 8 seasons remained vividly etched in Sally Struthers' mind. The laughter, the camaraderie, the moments of closeness and subtle understanding with Rob Reiner were memories she carried carefully, like fragile treasures hidden away in the corners of her heart. She had learned to navigate her feelings, to channel them into her craft, and to accept the boundaries Rob had imposed all those years ago. Yet, when the opportunity arose to reconnect, a mix of anticipation and anxiety surged through her, a reminder of the emotional ache she had carried for so long. It was the premiere of The Producers in 2003, a gathering of old friends and industry veterans. Sally approached the event with both excitement and trepidation. She had rehearsed what she might say, imagined the warmth of reunion, and hoped for the briefest acknowledgement of the bond that had once existed between her and Rob. As she walked through the crowd, past familiar faces and flashing cameras, she spotted him, Rob Reiner, the man who had been central to both her professional life and private heartache. Her chest tightened, her pulse quickened, and a fragile hope blossomed. Perhaps this time, things would be different. Sally moved forward, recalling every moment, every laugh, every glance that had once made the hours on set feel intimate and alive. She called out softly, Robbie, a voice laden with nostalgia, excitement, and the longing of years unspoken. Rob turned, his expression polite, his posture composed, but the warmth she had hoped to encounter was absent. He extended his hand in a brief, formal handshake, a gesture that was courteous but distant. "Hello, Sally. Nice to see you," he said, the words simple, detached, almost perfunctory. The encounter stunned Sally. In an instant, the vivid memories of their closeness seemed frozen, crystallized into a cold reality. The intimacy she had remembered, the moments of connection, the private laughter and shared understanding, all were overlaid by the social formality of 2 people standing on a red carpet decades later. The man she had admired, the co-star she had once felt closest to, was now a stranger in his demeanor, courteous but emotionally remote. Sally's heart ached, a familiar pain rekindled by the sudden contrast between past closeness and present distance. She forced a smile, masking the wave of disappointment, and engaged briefly with others before retreating to a quieter space. The rest of the evening was a blur of social interactions, applause, and polite conversations, yet the shadow of that handshake lingered, a stark reminder of the distance Rob had maintained for all these years. The emotional wall that had been quietly built over 2 decades stood firm, impermeable to hope, memories, and unspoken longing. Sally realized that whatever warmth or closeness had once existed would remain buried, inaccessible in the face of time, circumstance, and the choices Rob had made to protect his own life and relationships. In the days that followed, Sally reflected on the encounter, struggling to reconcile her memories with reality. She recognized the reasons for Rob's behavior, his dedication to boundaries, the complexities of Hollywood, the need to maintain professionalism, and perhaps his desire to honor the life and relationships he had built. Rationally, she understood the necessity. Emotionally, however, the experience was jarring, reopening wounds that had lain dormant for years. The mixture of admiration, grief, and lingering affection was complex, a painful reminder of a love she had never received, the companionship that had been withdrawn, and the connection that had quietly dissipated over time. Sally came to a decision that night, a protective measure for her heart. She resolved that future encounters with Rob would be avoided, that she would slip into an alley, retreat to the shadows, or sidestep situations where his presence might trigger renewed disappointment. The risk of experiencing that cold, formal detachment again was too great, a reminder that their bond, however once profound, had been replaced by distance and unspoken boundaries. She would preserve her memories and her respect for him, but she would no longer expose herself to the painful reality of a connection that could never be restored. Years passed, and both Sally and Rob continued their separate paths in Hollywood. Each pursued successes, accolades, and personal growth, yet the silent thread of their history remained a private, unspoken element of Sally's life. The show they had created together endured in television history, studied in film schools, and celebrated by audiences old and new. But the emotional truth, the longing, the heartache, and the quiet admiration remained hers alone, a poignant chapter in a story that was never fully realized, a reminder of what once was and what could never be again. On December 14th, 2025, the world of Hollywood was shaken by the sudden passing of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner. The news struck Sally Struthers like a cold shock, reigniting decades of memories and emotions she had carefully guarded. The laughter, the shared triumphs, the closeness they had once experienced on the set of All in the Family, all of it surged back, intertwined with the pain of distance, the sting of rejection, and the silent ache of unspoken affection. The man who had once been a kindred spirit, a collaborator, and a source of quiet joy was gone, leaving behind only memories that were both warm and painfully incomplete. Sally spoke publicly for the first time after Rob's passing. At 78, she described a relationship that had been far more complex than any television audience could imagine. She recounted the early closeness on set, the inside jokes, the shared understanding during rehearsals, and the rare glimpses of tenderness that had existed amidst the boundaries Rob maintained. Her voice, steady yet tinged with sadness, conveyed the profound mix of admiration, respect, and lingering heartache that had defined their years together. She acknowledged the brilliance of Rob as both an actor and a director, recognizing his influence on her career and on the landscape of American television, even as she reflected on the emotional distance that had remained between them. Sally admitted that for decades she had carried a quiet pain, a longing for a connection that had never been reciprocated. The memories of fleeting gestures, subtle glances, and moments of shared understanding were bittersweet, a testament to a bond that had been deep yet constrained. She reflected on how professional boundaries, personal choices, and the demands of Hollywood had shaped the trajectory of their relationship. Despite the distance, she retained profound respect for Rob, recognizing the moral integrity, talent, and discipline that had defined him both on and off screen. In the wake of Rob's passing, Sally also acknowledged the regrets that come with unspoken words and missed opportunities. She wished that some moments could have been revisited, that conversations left unfinished might have offered clarity or solace. Yet she understood that life rarely provides such second chances. The bond they had shared, rich with laughter and artistic collaboration, had always existed within a framework of limits, shaped by time, circumstance, and choices beyond her control. Ultimately, what remained was the recognition of a relationship that had shaped her life profoundly. Rob had been a co-star, a collaborator, a silent ally in moments of triumph and vulnerability. He had also been a source of unfulfilled affection, a presence both cherished and elusive. Sally's reflections conveyed a poignant truth. Life is often defined by the connections we make and those we never fully realize. The story of Michael and Gloria on screen, of Rob and Sally behind it, became not only a testament to television history, but also a deeply human narrative of longing, restraint, and enduring respect. As she concluded her statement, Sally murmured, "There are no words left. This is truly unbearable." In her heart, Rob was more than a colleague or former co-star. He was a part of her history, a kindred spirit whose presence had shaped her career, her craft, and her memories. And though the chance for reconciliation or full understanding was gone, the warmth of shared experience, the lessons learned, and the enduring impact of their collaboration would remain with her forever. A complex but cherished legacy in the landscape of her life and in the annals of television history.